So I know that going into Jurassic Park, you were going to use Go Motion, and then ultimately it was decided that they were going to use CGI. Before that decision for CGI was made, I mean, what was kind of your mindset in terms of what you were planning to do, or kind of your feel for the project?
Long before the edict came down, it was all going to be computer graphics. We were planning on doing it with the conventional technology at the time, which was Go Motion, which was a kind of a motion control stop motion puppet. And so I was having engineers work on a whole bunch of equipment to get all that stuff together, and we were shooting a bunch of tests, behavioral tests that we needed for continuity between Stan Winston's full-scale props and what was going to be ultimately CG. But we just used conventional stop motion ways of exploring the dynamics of the character and its pantomime and action and what it could do, and to show what kinds of shots were Stan Winston capable and other ones that were more computer graphics. So it was mostly the close-ups, the head stuff was going to be Stan, or just the feet, and then all the wider ambulatory shots were going to be Go Motion or computer graphics. And so that's how we built all of that stuff. Really simple. We got Rick Carter's production design sets for the Raptor kitchen and the paddock, Tyrannosaurus paddock, and built scale models of those, and then worked out the performances based on the storyboards that we had been developing over the previous year.
Mm-hmm. You had done so many huge projects leading up to that with Star Wars and the Robocop films. What were sort of the challenges you saw with Jurassic Park when you still had that mindset that you were going to be working on it in that way? What made it kind of different than the other stuff you had done?
Well, it was a strong story, mm-hmm. and it wasn't. The complication for me was switching gears and having to understand the computer graphic technology and what you could and couldn't do with that. Mm-hmm. So that was a pretty steep learning curve, but the rest of it was pretty conventional. You go about setting up these shows in a particular kind of way. In pre-production, just make sure that everything is in line and you're all ready to go. So when you go on location, you know exactly what you need. You can shoot, what you've got, and usually the director will direct it, the shot, and then turn and look and go like, and then sometimes you go like, the eye lines weren't that great. Maybe mm-hmm. do another take, and they're like, if you're happy, I'm happy. So. Mm-hmm.
I know you said that you knew CGI was coming at that point around 92, 93, but you were kind of surprised by how fast it was ready for Jurassic Park. Do you think the success of that film and the CGI being so convincing in it kind of sped up how fast we got into CGI kind of becoming sort of the mainstay for Hollywood at that point?
So there was pre-Jurassic Park, and then that was it. Mm-hmm. That proved. Up until that point, Dennis had been working on, I think ILM had done Young Sherlock, Stained Glass Man, and Abyss, and Terminator 2. Which were all kind of hallucinogenic kinds of things that was suited very well to the computer, but it was pretty much Steve Williams and Mark DePay at ILM that kind of clandestinely proved that a computer graphic thing could work. Mm. And then Amblin gave ILM some money, and Dennis took the test further and took that down to Steve and showed him, and went, that's it. Mm-hmm.
How much different of a final product do you think it would have been if you would have gone through with stop
motion?
Well,
we did some other tests that were kind of interesting, where we took the conventional stop motion puppets, and Brian Knepp, who was one of the engineers that developed this input device that we ultimately used for the Raptors and the Tyrannosaur, developed a system that was kind of based on a morphing system where they took the contiguous frames in stop motion and kind of merged them together so there was a blur, and that was really interesting looking. It looked really cool. That was definitely something that we would have done quite a bit of if we went that route. Mm-hmm. But that didn't happen.
Right. Do you think it would have changed the impact of it all? Do you think
it looked really good, but the CG looked really, that stuff looks better than a lot of stuff you see today.
Right.
It would have had a different look. I mean, it depends on your level of, observation, what you're seeing. Computer graphics always look kind of weird to me because it's not photographic,
right.
And it can't be photographic. It can appear to be photographically representational, but it's not. So you shoot a real thing with real light, and it's a different animal. It has a different palpability to it. And I think another huge aspect of it is with the stop motion, the go motion, all the planning has to be like really critical, because once it's done, nobody can go back in like they do today, and you get like 6 pages of notes from somebody upstairs saying change this, change that, change this, change this, and nowadays you can do hundreds of takes or adjustments on a shot, and back then it was like no, we pretty much did everything in one take unless something technically went wrong.
Can you talk a little bit about kind of your final role on the film when you were a supervisor? I mean, what did that kind of entail on a day-to-day basis, being a dinosaur supervisor on it?
Well, it kind of started off, I think, in conjunction with the day job of like just making sure that everything is going to happen in a way that's going to get you what you need to start doing the work. I would go down to story meetings with David Koepp and Spielberg and run through the screenplay. And Spielberg's really inclusive, and he'll take like any good idea. And so I was kind of hired as this guy. I was like kind of in between. I knew a lot about paleontology. I'd studied paleontology. I made some other dinosaur films, and I understood the movies and how all that stuff works together. So I was kind of like the right guy for the job. And so we'd be right through the script, and it gets to this point where you see the first dinosaur, and the script is kept transcribed it from Crichton. They see a brontosaurus and go, hey, what if there's a better dinosaur than a brontosaurus? It looks a lot cooler, and it's a lot bigger, and that would be, so what is that? Well, it's a brachiosaur. Oh, and then we had dinosaur books. It's like, yeah, that. And then it was just a bunch of things like that, where you go through and like troubleshoot. Crichton had on the page, he had the Tyrannosaurus picks up the Jeep and shakes it like Godzilla. Well, he can't do that. How come? Well, the Jeep weighs 2 tons or whatever, and the Tyrannosaurus only weighs 3, so he couldn't pick up that thing. Oh, okay, so what do we do? What if we had the Tyrannosaurus attack the car like it was an animal? And it doesn't know what to do, so it does what it would do in nature. It flips the thing over to get to its tender underbelly and tries to go after that. And, so those little kind of things, like little what-ifs kind of built into, that would be good, and, try it out in storyboards, and John Bell would draw up the storyboards. Or Crichton had this stampede scene that was with these duck-billed dinosaurs that are kind of really goofy-looking things. And they were really big, and they were ungainly. So if they were stampeding, I thought it would look funny. I thought they would look like a bunch of ducks waddling around, and proposed another kind of a dinosaur that was a lot more fleet and could probably get up to 50 or 60 miles an hour. And so I proposed that, and they liked that. So yeah, they were very flexible. Stephen was very flexible with all that stuff.
Is there anything else besides the stuff you mentioned, one kind of contribution you had or idea you had that kind of stands out, or something you're most proud of?
No, you just try a whole bunch of stuff, and you're working with other people, and a lot of times it's kind of like kids playing with toys a little bit. You like, what if? And like, oh yeah, and then we could, and then we could, and you just try and have as much fun as you can, and make things as dramatic or dynamic or whatever, and just keep building it. You get like a good idea in the middle of the night and propose it. And some things I proposed got shot down, like in some of the early tests that we did.
The raptor tongue. Right?
The raptor tongue, yeah. And so that got shot down by Jack Horner. So they can't do that, because at that particular time, Stephen was very adamant that they be played like animals, real animals, real dinosaurs. And I was like, wait a minute, they use frog DNA, they just made this shit up. But no, I don't want it to be made up. He wanted, pretty much to be sanctioned by the paleontological community, have them go like, hey, I saw a dinosaur for the first time. And so, you know, things like that get, okay, no tongues.
Mm. I was speaking to Stan Winston's son, Matt Winston, and he was saying that being on set, he felt kind of top the film, just seeing all the dinosaurs and the puppets and seeing the full-scale T-Rex. I mean, being on set what was that like, just seeing all that stuff? And was it more amazing for you to actually be on the set or to actually see the final product?
Oh, you know, when you're on the set, you're just doing your day job and keeping your eyes peeled all the time. So you're just watching all the time. So they're like huge chunks of time when you're not physically working, but you're just watching stuff. And you may have an idea for, you know, the pantomime of the full-scale Tyrannosaurus, you know, and you just bring it up. Or there'd be a thing where we were doing a computer graphic shot when the lawyer gets killed. Initially, that we were setting it up and got the cameras going, and did a take, and I went like, hey, you know what we should do? What if we just tilted the camera up, and you saw, because the way it was storyboarded and scripted and everything, it was the Tyrannosaurus was just like a train and just blasts through this thing, and you just assume that the lawyer is killed, but we should see somebody eaten by a Tyrannosaurus. And Stephen goes, yeah, we should do that. And Kathy's going, wait a minute, that's not in the budget. And he's like, no, just tilt the camera up. You don't have to use it. If you change your mind, you can't find the money. And then the way that they worked, they were like very, very flexible. I think we had budgeted something like 50 shots, 55 dinosaur shots. And so they would trade. Oh, I don't need this shot. I really want that shot.
But a lot of that just came from Spielberg's preparation, right? I mean,
things would change on the set. You know, it was like, you know what, I don't need that shot. I'm going to save it for something else.
That preparation kind of gives you the room to kind of improvise, right?
Well, I mean, the preparation was really locked down because we had all the animatics for those two scenes, and we literally made them to, you know, copy the animatics. That was what was in the film. In fact, if you run the animatics, you can just take the soundtrack from the movie and plug it in, and it's amazing how close it matches.
Well, 25 years later now, looking back at Jurassic Park, and what's kind of your biggest takeaway, or what's kind of your biggest memory of that time and working on the project? Is it the moving into CGI, or was there anything else?
Well, that was a game changer. You know, it just everything changed at that moment. And if you wanted to survive in this racket, that's what you did.
Right.
You know, it was, I have this thing that's like, it's kind of what allows women to have more than one child, you know? And so I kind of feel like most movies that I've worked on are like a victim of a violent crime, you know? So you just like, so I don't think about any of this stuff at all until people start asking me questions. It's all stuff that happened in the past. So, you know, I really don't remember that much. I mean, occasionally there'll be like little things that, you know, pop up, or, you know, because of the nature of what we do in visual effects, it's so compartmentalized, right. You know. I mean, you know, I was able to kind of play outside the normal box in that, you know, once we got some of these dinosaur Bible studies together, I hooked up with Gary Rydstrom and brought him the stop motion tests that we did, and he started to build the sound, because it was really important that on the set for Stan's stuff and for the animators later on, that we have the voices locked down and we know what the voices are. Right. So the pantomime each voice has a specific attack and a decay to it, and the pantomime has to you know, announce that. And so it's you know, that kind of stuff was fun to play around with. And but then, you know, you just work, it was really a vertical climb for everybody on that film, because everything was just being figured out about how to and so it was just a lot of hard work, and then you're just like, you know, focused on this tiny little thing, and you know, you'll see the scenes getting built and cut, you know, as Michael Kahn starts to shape the thing. You know, they'll send you a cut, and you'll look at the cut and on film, So you'd see the scenes that you were working on being built, but you wouldn't see the rest of the thing.
Right.
And so Kathy invited Dennis and I down to Amblin. It was just the three of us in the screening room, and we watched the movie. And she turns around in her chair and goes like, "So what do you think?" And I went like, "It's not terrible." And she went like, "That's exactly what I thought." And so it's like, you know, until you see everything all together, you don't, you know. I mean, there would be things like for the scene where you see the Brachiosaurus, the first dinosaur, we went down to turn over the cut with Stephen, and so it was all just a photographic background plays, no dinosaurs in it at all. But I think he used, or Con, or somebody found I think it was the St. Crispin's Day music from Henry the whatever, and it was a score that was tonally a lot similar to what what was used in the movie. And so you just like are watching the thing and you go like, this totally works. This is going to work. You know? And it's almost like, and not like really being glib, you know, when I say that a lot of our work was done for us, you know, because all of the dinosaurs were based on bones that had evolved over 200 million years. So they were designs that had been really well worked out, and if you just analyzed them, it was almost like a wind-up toy. All you have to do is wind it up, and it goes. You know?
So it's different than like Star Wars when you're in a different galaxy, or Robocop when you're in the future or something. It's a completely
the Starship Troopers, where you're inventing stuff, and then you got to figure out how that works. But the dinosaurs, on a performance level, were pretty straightforward.